Well, so much for protecting the family name, that's for sure, because after that, there is no way that the family is going to be able to come back from that. Just no way. Hey guys, come over for the season finale of Bloodline, Season 2, Episode 10, Part 23, and holy shit, what a finale. I mean, really, this could not have gotten worse, I have to say. Now, I'm not saying worse in terms of this was a bad episode. I'm saying for the Rayburn family, things could not have possibly gotten worse than they just did, but they got so much worse, honestly. I mean, this entire season has been, of course, as we know, cleaning up all the damage, and of course, in this episode, I think it only makes sense for them to create more damage. Now, the one thing I'm worried about is that this show has not been renewed for season 3, so this very well could be the series finale, and I really hope it's not. I really hope it's not. We'll get into that, though. Let's just get in this episode. There is a lot to talk about, a lot happened in this episode. Not the best episode of the season for me. I think still the Diana episode is still the strongest episode we've had so far. This was still a great episode, a really just great finale overall, much better than the last episode. There was a lot of stuff that happened in this episode. Some incredible scenes, definitely. Let's just get into it, because really there's some big stuff going on. So we start off with Diana. She's back on the deck asking John about the drowning, and she pretty much knows how it happened, how John pulled it off, and at this point, we see John's face is completely devoid of all feeling, but he's also dripping with sadness. I think he's devoid of feeling because he really, again, doesn't feel like himself. He doesn't feel like he really killed Danny. He doesn't want to admit that he actually did it, and he's also dripping with sadness. He dodges the question, and he just scoots over to the fact that he said he'd tell Diana if they're ever, and again, he never tells her. He never tells her if he killed Danny or not. She kind of just knows by just the way he's saying it. He never tells her, but he does tell her that he just told her that if they're never not safe, and he's telling her straight out that it's not looking safe for them, and things are not looking good, and he tells you whatever it is that she has to do. But I love that she says, look, that's not enough for me. I need more answers. Again, Diana never gets the answers that she wants. She knows totally what's going on, but she just wants an answer. She wants to know the truth, and I don't think he's ever really going to tell her what he did. It's definitely interesting to see, because she looks like, she looks like she's ready to kill him, honestly. Just the look in her eyes, she looked like she was ready to kill him, and if he had not said that to her, I think she would have just killed him right then and there. But really good way to start things off. Definitely really do like that, and I like there was a lot more Diana and John in this episode, definitely. Although you still see these two are very, very distant. You definitely see that. So back on the beach, we see Marco's doing a little exploring after his conversation with Eric, and basically, we see Eric actually figures out that John was at the beach, not Marco, and in return, Marco promises him immunity, basically. So 2 steps behind any actual breakthrough, Marco stumbles upon that private camera, the one with the footage of John and Meg and Kevin, and of course, Ozzy and Eric that we saw, were there as well. We found that out in the last episode that they were there, and John then shares that same footage with Meg, but promises that he will take the responsibility. But Meg makes a very valid point here, that they're on the camera, so there's no avoiding it. They are involved, obviously, because they're on the footage. So Marco knows that they're on the footage. He has all the footage that he needs, and Marco continually says that in this episode, that there's really nothing they can say to prove their innocence. But Meg says that she's sick and tired of lying, and she wants to tell the truth. She finally just wants to admit it. She wants to finally just take the blame for it and say, hey, that we were a part of it. And that's when we see Ghost Danny. John is still seeing Danny as a ghost. He makes a welcome return. He's smoking his cigarettes, and you can just see that, again, this is really starting to affect John, the way that's going. I definitely really do like seeing that. And then we get what I think is one of the best scenes of this entire episode. So as we know, Sally's staying at the inn with Nolan and Eve, and they're kind of starting to bond a lot, but then Ozzy, of course, comes in to kind of ruin it, and I like the way that this was done. I thought this was definitely really interesting, the way that he talked about this. He tells her that she looks just like Danny, which, immediately is super shady, but he also comes in, drops all the things that Sally hates about her life, how her kids are, and how they're all kind of like Danny, and he just very casually says this and how her life is so fucked up and things like that. And again, John Leguizamo, I think, just does a great job with saying lines cheerfully but very menacingly. And Eve then comes out, she gives Ozzy this look, and Eve just wants her to take her dread boyfriend son and live with her almost mother and live with, Sally, but it's, that's obviously what she wants. She wants Ozzy to have no part of this. She kind of just wants Ozzy gone, and I like the way that Sally's not really, listening to Ozzy at all. She's kind of just tuning him out because honestly, anything he says is, very shady. You can't really trust this guy, and I do kind of feel bad for him though because in the end, he ends up alone. Ozzy's the one that kind of ends up alone. I honestly feel Ozzy's story, I think, is over. I think this is probably going to be the last we see of Ozzy. I don't think we're going to see him after this season. I don't really know where else they're going to go with him next season. So in my opinion, I think Ozzy's going to be off the show after this episode. I just don't really see what else they can do with him. But we then see Marco and Aguirre's operation have been shut down until Internal Affairs lifts their suspension. Even with all the information they have on John, they still have been shut down because, as we know, they closed this case a while ago. A lot of people still think that Lowry's the one that killed Danny, and it appears that everyone's starting to have to face their own demons. And we see Jake comes up to Kevin, of course, little Jake, who Kevin rehires back on the staff, but then he finds out that he will probably be his last hire because Louise and Gilbert will be running the show soon. Now, again, I just didn't really see the point of Gilbert. I get that Gilbert's obviously taking over, but he's not even in this episode. Gilbert's not even here. But on top of that, Meg drops the information on Kevin that Eric is involved with the cops, and obviously that's a big problem. Kevin needs to know that, and she even said that she was going to call Kevin, so obviously this is a problem. And if we remember, Ozzy did not endorse this plan at all, so it's no surprise when he shows up with his jacket, gets pissed off at Eric, and Eric pushes him, and that's when Ozzy pulls a gun out. But then Chelsea comes out with the biggest gun possible, literally like a hunting gun, and Chelsea's just such a badass, and I love the protection she has over her brother. Just even in the worst of circumstances, she's always going to stick up for her brother. She's always going to have his back, and I really love that. Meanwhile, Nolan has another flash to the past. Remember his meeting with Robert and Danny, and he thanked Robert for all the nice checks he sent to Eve, but now Eve and Nolan live with Sally, who's curious about why Ozzy came to visit them, because obviously she doesn't really know why Ozzy's there, and Eve explains that Ozzy's her ex, and I like that Eve didn't lie to Sally, because again, we have to wonder, does Eve have ulterior motives? I think this episode confirms that she doesn't. She actually kind of wants to start over. She wants to be a good mother to Nolan. I think she kind of just wants that normality in her life, and basically she says Ozzy and Danny once robbed a drugstore for pills to sell, as one does, but Sally's confused why he didn't ask Robert for help, but he did, because then we get this flashback that I absolutely loved. Now, the one thing I'm surprised about with this season is that they didn't really use Ben Mendelsohn nearly as much as I thought they were going to. When we saw those flashbacks in episode 1, I assumed we were going to get one every episode. We didn't. I think that honestly has kind of hurt this season a bit. Ben Mendelsohn has been seriously lacking. I think the show could have used a lot more flashbacks, but they saved most of them for this episode because constantly throughout this episode we're flashing back in the past to see Danny and Nolan's relationship. And we find out some stuff about Danny here that I really did like. We go to this flashback where Danny excused Nolan so that he could ask Robert for the money for the restaurant, and we see that Danny actually tried to be a nice dad, a good dad to Nolan, honestly. It seemed like he was trying to be a good father, and I like seeing that. I thought that was definitely interesting, and especially when we know what Danny was doing, how he was popping pills, he was having threesomes, he was killing girls, things like that. Robert agrees to give the money to Danny for the restaurant, but if he takes it, he has to provide for Nolan on his own. He even says that this is part of what adulthood is, and I get why Robert is just kind of being a hard parent, because Danny needs to be a good parent. He can't just be someone that's just his friend. So Danny trolls Nolan over the family, and basically they decide to take care of Nolan, and I thought that was definitely interesting. Nolan overhears all of this go down, which obviously, we can just tell that's one of the reasons why Nolan's so upset, knowing that his entire family really doesn't want him and that they're not going to support him anymore. It probably hurt Nolan a lot, and I get why we're seeing this. We're not just seeing this to see random flashbacks, we're seeing this to see why Nolan is so fucked up, why his psyche is so confused, why he acts the way he does. This is why Nolan is that way, and I definitely really like that. So then we get to this really interesting plot point with Chelsea and John, which I thought was really interesting. They meet back up, and basically, we see Chelsea's, trying to live her life, get her mom to take her medicine, things like that, and John asks if she'll come down and try to identify Ozzy so they can get him off the street because John doesn't want him hurting anyone, because he obviously knows how destructive Ozzy is, he knows how set on revenge Ozzy is, and he obviously wants to protect Ozzy, from their family. Chelsea apologized, and Chelsea, knows that this is the guy that, went after Eric and everything, but Chelsea actually, takes this chance to apologize to John for all the times that he's had to clean up Eric's messes, and John actually says, he even says that there's nothing to apologize for because she's practically hasn't done anything. She really is just stuck up for her brother. Her brother's done all the wrongs. She hasn't really had anything to do with it, and even though she is, again, trying to stick up for her brother and trying to take the heat for her brother, he's not going to do that. He's not going to let her do that. So Chelsea does head down to the station, identifies Ozzy, and you can see John just really excited because he feels that this is going to help them, that by saying that Ozzy is destructive, they can make Ozzy look like a suspect. That's what I was thinking they were going to do, is that they were going to frame Ozzy. They were going to make it seem like Ozzy was the one that killed Danny. They're going to have that story connected to it, but obviously they can't really do that because, Marco sees Ozzy on the footage. It definitely was not Ozzy that was on... that was the one that killed Danny. He knows that for a fact, and there's really no way that they can make it seem that way, unfortunately. Even though John, I think, wants that, there's really no way they can do that. So a couple down, we see Kevin and Belle are checking a sonogram of the baby Rayburn, basically, and Belle says that the baby looks like Kevin, but basically it's actually kind of a lighthearted scene regarding that Marco's questioning regarding that time that he covered up Sheriff Aguirre's domestic assault. He denies he covered up anything, but Ortiz is hanging out, waiting for her to drag Marco across the fire of justice. As we know, Ortiz is going to make sure that all of this ends up happening, and Miss Ortiz is going to basically, unfortunately, though, she shuts down the whole thing, and it's kind of understandable, she never wanted to really be a part of this. John just kind of brought her into it. She never wanted to be a part of it, and she said it's a misunderstanding, and basically we then get this incredible scene with John, Kevin, and Meg. Probably my favorite scene this entire episode. I absolutely love this scene. And honestly, this felt like a series finale. This scene right here felt like it was going to be a series finale, but I don't think it is the series finale. There's no way this is the series finale. I just don't think it is. So, John rolls Kevin and Meg back together for a special beach meeting, and because obviously Kevin's involved, Meg's involved, and basically they say unless Eric changes the story, then all three of them are screwed. Even if Kevin believes that he and Meg didn't do anything. And he says that. He says that we had nothing to do with this. This is all on you. We didn't do anything, and that, we had nothing to do with killing Danny. We were not the ones that did it. And I love what John says here because honestly, they all have really good points here. John gets real fresh, tells them that they had a choice, and he argues that he killed Danny because Meg and Kevin wanted. They even said to him before he left, if you don't do something about him, we will. Now, Kevin claims he didn't mean to kill Danny. He didn't mean to do that. He meant to actually just take care of him, send him back or something. He didn't mean to actually tell him to kill him. That's what John did, though. Now, we know the obvious reason John did is because he was dead set on doing so, obviously because of what happened to Janie and everything, but John argues that he killed it because they wanted it, and he even says that they didn't need to move the body. That was their choice to move it. He didn't tell them to move it. They did it on their own, and they made themselves a part of this. And honestly, I get what John is trying to say here. Now, is it entirely their own fault? No. I mean, clearly, they want to help their brother, and I love the way he does say, though, that, basically when he told Meg that they fall apart if they didn't stick together, he meant that. He meant that they'd fall apart, that he's been there for any time they've needed him. He's been there. Any situation that's happened, he's been there. When Kevin was having drug problems, he was there. When Meg was having problems, he was there. When anyone was having problems, he was there. Even Danny, he helped Danny in the end. And Meg and Kevin told John that it's on him now, and they drive away, and he just talks about how, this is all their fault. They need to take the blame for it. He's not going to just take the blame for them. It is their fault. They need to admit it's their fault. That's entirely what's going on. Really great scene. Just such a powerful scene there. Kyle Chandler, Norbert Leo Bus, and, Linda Cardellini just killed it in that scene. They all just did such an incredible job because honestly, like I said, they're not wrong. John, yes, in the end, he did try to protect his siblings. That's exactly what he's been trying to do. I've said this all season. John doesn't want anyone to do things for him. He wants to take the blame for everything that happened because he feels he needs to punish himself for what he did to Danny, and you definitely get that sense here. But then there's Kevin and Meg who did bring themselves into it. They can't entirely say that they're not a part of this, but for the rest of the episode, they kind of just leave Kevin on their own, John on their own. You don't know know if they're actually going to see John again after this episode. You don't really know. It kind of seems like the Rayburns might actually split up after this episode. The way things end up, that's what seems like is going to happen. But that's basically just such an incredible scene. Like I said, by far my favorite scene this episode. That was the scene that for me felt the most complete, and for me was by far my favorite scene this finale. Absolutely love that scene. Incredible stuff, and just I would have wanted to see a lot more scenes of that this season, just these three together. Now, there have been some. There just, I don't think, has been enough as, nearly as enough as we've had, but I absolutely love that scene. Amazing stuff there, really good stuff, and I think perfectly shows just where everyone is. John, Meg and Kevin never want to be a part of this, really. John just kind of brought them into this, while John feels that they brought themselves into it. And honestly, I don't think either of them are wrong, that they did bring themselves in this by moving the body, but John brought them into this deeper. He was the one that said, you can't tell anyone. You can tell that Meg and Kevin kind of don't want to lie anymore. They kind of want to admit what's going on, but John, once again, is keeping them from telling said plan, and they're going to do whatever he's going to do whatever he can to try to cover this up, even though it doesn't seem to be working, and, he continues to try to cover it up, even though, his other attempts have failed. So Marco and Eric then have this quick chat where he promises Eric immunity if he comes in the next day, but you also don't know what's going to happen. You feel like someone's going to stop that from happening. Later that night, Ozzy then lights up with his Zippo and heads to the sports bar where he'd be allowed to smoke inside, and John pulls up after him, breaks into his car, does some investigating of his own. Obviously, there's something definitely in that car. He knows that, and that's when he finds Ozzy's gun, and I'm like, what is he going to do with that gun? Why does he have Ozzy's gun? What is he really going to do with that? I mean, especially John in this episode, he just seems dead set on revenge. He seems dead set in just, terminating people and just, doing whatever he can to make sure that he's not involved. And, it seems like he's going to kill someone. Like, all right, what are you going to do, John? What are you going to do? I thought he was going to kill Ozzy. I really thought that's where we were going here. But then we see, we then see after this, we see the tapes between Lowry that Lowry had with Danny and everything, and those end up, we find out, with Gilbert, who's listening to them the same way that, who's listening to them very intently, we see. Definitely that's what's going on. I thought that was definitely very interesting. So like I said, Meg is just dead set on telling the truth in this episode because she's tired of hiding it, and she finally admits to Marco that she released the information on Aguirre, but she kept him out and would like to talk to him off the record about what's going on. But Marco lets her know real quick that they don't have a personal relationship anymore. Why? Because he doesn't trust her. And I think that's honestly very understandable that we saw that. I think it definitely does make sense why that happened, why he doesn't want to have a personal relationship with her anymore. He doesn't trust her. She hasn't proven that he could trust her, and you definitely do understand that, so I definitely do feel bad for Meg. I mean, just in this one moment, she just wanted Marco, she just wanted to tell Marco what was going on, but he's so against the family right now that he wants nothing to do with them, and you totally understand that. I mean, again, I don't think Marco's been a bad guy. I think he's someone that they've just run against him so many times that he just can't really trust them anymore. They've broken that trust. He doesn't want to hear anything from them, and I definitely can understand that. So Nolan then bounces back to a time where basically we see Danny was alive. He reflects on the time he saw Danny post jail. Danny passes keys on to Nolan before boarding the bus to go see the Rayburn clan, and we realize that this is when Danny went back to see them, but not before telling him to take good care of himself, and we realize that's why Danny was going to leave. That's where Danny went. He was with Nolan all this time. Diana then stumbled, and that is why this whole situation happened. That is how he abandoned Nolan, is that he went back and everything. As we know, John was the one that got him back, and we get this incredible scene with Nolan. Diana stumbles upon Nolan being really super reflective. He's crying, asks if he's okay, and that's when Nolan admits that he feels that he's responsible. He feels he's responsible for Danny. He actually feels like he is the one that caused Danny's death, because if he wouldn't have, basically if he wouldn't have, let Danny leave, he could have, stopped his death from happening. So he feels that he's caused death. That is why he's been so reflective. That is why he's been so moody, and that is why he acts the way he does, because he feels that he's responsible, and it's just such a good scene. Love the way that was done. Diana and and Nolan are in a very similar situation. There's been a death they both had nothing to do with, and they both feel like they're responsible for different reasons, and I really did love that. I've loved the focus that Diana's had more this season. I love the focus that we've had on Nolan. I remember Nolan came into the season, I thought this kid was going to be really annoying, or just really just trying to be a replacement for Danny, and it didn't work, but he's become such a better character than that. You're really seeing what Nolan's going through. You really understand what he's going through, and I think you definitely did see that in this scene. So what I think is Ozzy's final scene in the show, because honestly I don't see what else Ozzy can do. We see Ozzy is packing up his hotel. Luis comes to visit. Ozzy basically says that he needs him to come with. Luis says that he needs him to come with him. Ozzy responds that he needs him to suck his dick, and basically I think that's it. I think Ozzy's leaving. I think honestly that's gonna be it for Ozzy. That he doesn't want to deal with this anymore. He seems to be all on his own, and really just at the end of the day he's trying to make light of it. He's leaving, and I think we're not going to see Ozzy after the season. I mean, he doesn't really serve much of a purpose anymore. John failed to get him, arrested or whatever, and I think Ozzy's leaving. I think that's really it, and I think that really is going to be the end of Ozzy for good, which kind of sucks, but because I liked his character, and I think John Leguizamo did a great job, but I think Ozzy served his purpose. I think we need to do, and John Leguizamo, without it, either way, is still one of the best points of the season. So John then corners Eric with a gun, makes him come along with him, and it's a really crazy scene. I mean, just the way that John is acting here, he's no longer acting rational. He's now, anything he said about acting rational, he's not doing anymore. And then there's Meg and Kevin, who are contemplating going to Marco to tell him everything. They're honestly just thinking that they might just go into into Marco's house to tell him everything that's going on. And basically we see John then takes Eric to the boathouse. Eric's almost impressed by John's initiative, and he asks straight up if he's going to kill him too, because that's what it seems that he's going to do. It seems like John's actually going to kill Eric, and like I said, when John had that gun, I thought he was going to kill someone. John offers to help Eric, but Eric tells John that he knows everything, the drugs, the beach, and how he didn't keep him safe. There's nothing that John can say to get him on his side, because he knows everything that happened. And John loses his mind and tells him that he's a dirtbag, and Eric tells him to put a bullet in his head and that he killed his brother. And that's when John pulls the gun. He jams into Eric's eye, and he doesn't pull the trigger, actually, but he doesn't actually pull the trigger. It seems like he's actually going to kill him, but then he doesn't. He doesn't actually kill him. And why do I think John didn't kill him? Because I think this is the moment where John woke up. I think he just realized, I don't want to be a killer. I think that's what John was thinking here, that John just thought, if I want to do this, and if I want to protect my family name, I can't be a killer right now. I can't kill someone. And that's why he decides to actually, at the last moment, not pull the trigger. He gets it away from Eric, and we are to assume that he let Eric go on his own. He let Eric live his life and tell his story, and Eric just says he's anything to protect the Rayburn name. John then lowers the gun, drops the key on the ground, goes back out to his truck, and again, it seems like he's going to let Eric just live his own life. He's not going to kill Eric. It's just going to make matters worse, and I think it honestly was the smartest thing for John to do. That I think the best thing that he did was actually not kill Eric, because it seemed like he was going to kill Eric. He didn't kill Eric. At the 11th hour, he decided not to pull that trigger. I thought it was a very well done scene. I love the way that was done. I can't believe he actually didn't kill Eric. I really thought that Eric was just going to die there, but he doesn't die, and I think it's a perfect parallel to what ends up happening in the next scene. So Meg and Kevin then pull up at Marco's, but she can't just muster up the ability to go in and face him, because as he said, they have no relationship anymore. So Kevin decides to do that, and he's looking back at Meg, not really knowing, thinking that she might go with him, but there's nothing there. He takes the plunge, goes up to Marco's door, he steps in, and it seems like he's actually going to take the heat for John, because he tells Marco, look, I don't want to tell you what I did, what happened, and it seemed like he was about to tell Marco that he was the one that killed Danny, which of course he didn't. But then right at the 11th hour, just like John, he says that he had nothing to do with killing Danny. He says it straight out because he doesn't want to live this lie anymore. He wants to tell the truth. And again, they always say the truth will set you free. And Marco goes to a tangent about how the Rayburns just lie and lie and lie, and that's all he does. And he's really not wrong. That's all they do. They just feel like they can lie and lie, and they're interrupted when Eric calls, says that John's gone nuts, he needs to talk now. Marco agrees to meet him, completely dismisses Kevin, wants absolutely nothing to do with him because he knows what's going on, and he wants to arrest him, and that is until he tells Marco that it was John who killed Danny, says straight out that it was John that did it, and Marco already knows this, this isn't any news to him, he already knows what happened here. John's then driving around casually, he's ignoring calls from Diana. Meg, of course, has gone home to hang out with Sally at this point, but back at his place, Margot's not surprised by the information he's just been handed, actually tells Kevin that he, Meg, and John are all going to prison no matter what, that he's going to take them to prison, basically. So basically, Kevin then probably does the worst thing possible. He sees this dolphin figure, beats Marco to death, and Marco's dead. He's killed Marco, and Marco's dead. Now, I get why Kevin did this. I do get it. That in that sense, he didn't know what else to do. And like I said, I knew something would set Kevin off. I really did. I knew someone was going to set him off at some point. I knew something was going to happen there. But Marco's now dead. Marco's dead. Kevin's killed him, and that's what's happened now, is that Kevin's, Marco's now dead because of Kevin, and I knew Kevin was going to do something. It seemed like he got his life together. Apparently he didn't, and he killed Marco. Now, is it kind of a dumb cliffhanger? Yeah, I don't really think he had to kill Marco. I think he could have hit him once, and then that would have been fine. Knock him out unconscious, but in this sense, he meant to kill Marco. He did. He hit him once, and he kept hitting him and hitting him and hitting him. I mean, it really was just crazy, and it's insane that he actually killed Marco. I can't believe he actually killed him. Now, I get that Marco obviously got too close to them, and he was trying to protect his family and everything, but we, again, know that Kevin wanted nothing to do with this, so right at the end, he ends up killing Marco. It just seemed kind of out of character not really out of character, but just because of what happened, it just seemed like it was out of place for Kevin to do, but it also makes sense. Again, Marco was going to come after the family. He was going to arrest them. Kevin wanted nothing to do with it. He wanted to get out of this lie, and the best way to do that, he thought, was to kill Marco. That's why he killed him. Marco's now dead, but that's not the end of the episode, because Meg then comes home crying. She breaks down in Sally's arms. She says that she has to tell her something. We know what she's gonna say. We know that she's gonna tell Sally that John killed Danny. We know she's finally gonna tell her that, because she needs to tell someone about what happened. She just needs to tell someone. She can't face Marco, so she's gonna face her own mother. Ghost Danny's then riding shotgun with John, and John, we see, is getting along with him, and basically, we see John's leaving. John's escaping from the keys. We don't know where he's going, but he seems to run away from it because he just can't face what he did. So basically, that's the way that the season finale ends. John's running away. Marco's dead. Eric doesn't have a car now. Sally just wants to start fresh, but Meg's about to tell her what's going on. And Kevin's now killed Marco, and they need to face what's going to happen there. And Ozzy's now leaving. So that's basically the way the season finale ends. Let's get more into this overall. So overall, I thought this was a good wrap-up, definitely. Now, the ending, I do think, kind of hurt this episode a little bit, because I was waiting for that John-Marco face-off, and we never got it. I really wanted to see a John-Marco face-off. I wanted to see a full-on fight between these two. We didn't see it, and I really was hoping we would, because it just seemed like in the last episode, the tension was building, and it just kind of stopped. Kevin killing Marco, that was the end of it. I get that Kevin did that to protect his family name, but now there is no protecting your family name. You've now killed someone who knows everything, someone who was connected to everything, who had all this information, who had everything planned out, and yes, he was the sole officer, the sole detective trying to, basically ruin this family and trying to arrest them and everything, and yes, he was just doing his job, but at the same time, I mean, now he's just killed everything, he's killed the evidence, he's now, ruined more, and I don't think that could have gone worse, honestly. I don't think they could have made things worse, because honestly, they made things so much worse than there already was. Where's John driving? I have no idea, but John's obviously going somewhere. Meg's gonna tell Sally what's going on. We know I think Sally kind of already knows what happened, though. Can she have this nice life with even Nolan? How is that going to ruin? How is Meg going to ruin that with what's going on? I think Nolan's probably going to be the main character next season. I'm surprised he was a main character this season, because he was in every episode, so I'm surprised he wasn't a main character, because, he was, like I said, he was in every episode. As far as Diana, is Diana ever going to get those answers that she wants? I don't know. Eric is now the only one that knows everything that's going on. Eric has all the information. Eric's connected to it all, and when he finds out that Marco died, what's going to happen there? Or is Kevin going to try to cover this up? It doesn't seem that way, because Kevin walked out of the house when he killed Marco, so now Kevin's, that was probably the worst thing he could have done. The worst thing I think Kevin could have done was, in fact, leave Marco in that house. He should have at least put him in his trunk or something, or dumped his body somewhere so no one would see it. But now Kevin's killed Marco. We don't know what's going to happen there. That's going to be interesting. Marco's going to be missing. I honestly don't know where this is headed, though. But that's basically how this season ends. Ozzy, like I said, I think he's gone from the show. I don't think we're going to see Ozzy again next season. We'll have to see what happens there. And then Eve. Does Eve have ulterior motives? We still don't know. I don't think Eve has ulterior motives. I think this episode confirmed that she definitely does not. But the big question, guys, is the show actually coming back? Because this has been the first show in a long time. They still have yet to get a season 3. Now, to be fair, it did take Sense8 a long time to get a season 2. And of course, they do have a season 2 coming up. They've changed the actor, but it is coming back in December. As far as Bloodline goes, though, I've never seen Netflix take this long to make a decision. I mean, I thought they were going to make a decision very quickly, but I think because of how much people didn't like the second season, which I didn't hate the second season, I'll give you my rating in a little bit, guys, but I didn't hate the second season by any means. For me, I just don't know if the show is actually coming back. But let me get into season 2 overall. Season 2, I didn't think was a bad season. Was it as good as season 1? No, it was not as good as season 1. I think season 1 was just a lot better because of Danny and everything that was going on there. And plus, we knew it was going to happen, and just it seemed more complete. It seemed like a more complete story. This was very much a epilogue of sorts. It was very repetitive. We kind of knew it was going to happen from the second everything went down. It was a very much, I think, this whole season was the climax. That's what this was. This whole season was the climax, and I think last season, if there's a last season, needs to be the last season. I think that definitely is going to happen. Now, moving forward, here's what I feel they need to do for Season 3. If you want to continue the story of the Rayburns, fine, you can do that. I think their story, there's a lot more they can do, but I also feel they should do what The Leftovers Season 2 did, which that was one of the reasons why, for me, that's one of the greatest seasons, or the greatest season of TV I've ever seen, because they introduced new characters, but were also so subtly incorporated the original cast, and I feel they can do that perfectly on Bloodline. Get like a couple members, you don't need to focus on just John, Meg, and Kevin, you could focus on just John, just Meg, just Kevin. You could do that very well. Introduce a whole new family that's different from the Rayburns. See them interact with the Rayburns. If John's leaving, fine, do that. Focus on Meg and Kevin, how they clean up this damage. Focus on Kevin cleans up this damage with Marco, while they also interact with this other family who's going through the same situation. Maybe this other family, they have a brother like Danny. Maybe Meg and Kevin try to stop them from making the same decision that they did so they don't end up like their family. And yes, do I think that should be the end of the Rayburns after that? Oh yeah, because I'm pretty sure no matter what happens next season, the Rayburns are ending up in jail. No matter what happens, they're ending up in jail. That's definitely happening. But I think if they were to do another season, that would be the best thing to do, is to bring in another family, then incorporate the Rayburns. That's what I think they should do the best, because The Leftovers did that so well. I'd love to see more seasons do that, and especially when you don't think you have more story to tell, you do, but it's just not enough to fill an entire season. Just bring another family, and I think that's one of the things that really did hurt this season, is that I don't really think they had enough of a story to tell. There was a lot of repetitive scenes. There was a lot of just, you knew it was going to happen. You knew eventually they were going to blow it up. You knew that eventually it was going to be so hard for them to keep this a secret. You just knew it wasn't going to work out in the end, and I think that really hurt some of the seasons, that you just knew what was going to happen from the second the season started, and it never really went in the direction I wanted to. Like I said, we never got that John Marco face-off, and I kind of wanted that John Marco face-off. What I did like is what it did with Nolan. I think that's a very good example of what they could do there. You could even focus just on them. Focus on them. Focus on the trauma they're going through. Nolan and Eve turned out to be some of the best characters the show has ever given us. I love what they gave us with Nolan and Eve, but there's definitely more story to tell with Kevin and Meg. So if they were to bring another family, you need to focus on Nolan, you need to focus on Meg, so you need to focus on Kevin, and you need to focus on Sally. John's story's done. I don't really see more of where John's story can go, honestly. After him leaving, I don't know where he's going. Maybe we'll focus on just him and the family that he meets. I don't really know, but there are so many directions they could take this. I just don't want them to just focus on the Rayburns. I think that's the best thing they should do. I think they should focus on another family besides the Rayburns, and then they can move on to tell, their story, and then we can see the way their story plays out, and then have that interact with the Rayburns, and I think that really will be the best direction for Season 3, and especially because I know so many people don't want Season 3. I want a Season 3, don't get me wrong, I do want a Season 3, but I just don't know if they'll be able to fill an entire story, so I think that probably is the best option to do, and if I were to make this show, that is probably the best thing, the best way that I would go. But, like, for me this season, I don't think it was terrible. I think it was a good season overall. I definitely did enjoy it. Was it as good as last season? No, but either way, I am going to give Bloodline Season 2 a 4 out of 5 or a B+, mainly because I just don't think this season reached the heights of last year. The tension wasn't as big. They set up a lot of things in the penultimate episode. It just didn't really deliver in the end. I think there was a lot of repetitive conversations. There were some amazing performances here, from the whole cast. Everyone I think did an amazing job, including newcomers, John Leguizamo, and whoever played Eve, I think did a great job as well. The problem was, I just felt a lot of this season was very repetitive. It was very predictable where it was going to go. And unfortunately, because of this cliffhanger, I don't really know what's going to happen in season 3, and I don't really know if I necessarily even want a season 3 based on what happened. Definitely, it was a good cliffhanger. I just don't really know how the payoff is going to be, and it kind of killed a lot of the season for me. Now, there were some really good things about it, but for me, not nearly as good as season 1. Season 1 definitely was very good. Do I think we need a season 2? Yes, we definitely did. They definitely could have done more with it, though. Definitely there were things they could have done more, like with Ghost Danny, things like that. But overall, I really did enjoy this season. I don't think it's nearly as bad as everyone's saying, and definitely, if you like season 1, definitely give season 2 a watch, because, you know, well, obviously you have given season 2 a watch, you watched my reviews, assuming you have. But, you know, definitely I think it was a very good second installment. I don't think you can ever top season 1, but definitely season 2 tried to do that, and I think they succeeded in at least trying to be as good as season 1. They definitely did do that. So overall, guys, that's it. Bloodline season 2 is now over. I have now finished the season. Let me know what you guys saw this season overall. What do you think is going to happen? Where is John driving to? Is Ozzy done from the show? What's going to happen now that Kevin killed Marco? Is he going to cover this up? Or is it going to be discovered immediately? I don't know. Are they end up going are Meg and Kevin going to be in jail at the end of the season, in the beginning of the season? I could possibly see that happening. Maybe Kevin just admits that he did it, and, you know, him and Meg are in jail. I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty going on right now. I don't really know what's happening. It seems like everyone's going to be split up next season, but we'll have to see. It really seemed like this season ended up destroying the Rayburns for good. We'll have to see. Let me know what you guys saw this season. Love your thoughts on it. We'll see you guys in, and I can't believe I'm already done with this season. You know, 10 episodes was really quick. I'm glad they did 10 episodes. I think they definitely did benefit from that. But I will see you guys in my next video, which will be for Queen of the South, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.